The rider came out of the west at a measured pace, as if the land itself had summoned him and he saw no reason to arrive early. By the time the town appeared, low, weather-worn, clinging to the plain like something that had refused to die, the sun was already leaning toward evening. Shadows stretched long across the road, reaching for his horse's hooves, then slipping away. He did not look like trouble. That was the first mistake people made. His coat was plain. His hat uncreased by fashion. His rifle rode easy across his back, not polished, not neglected. The kind of man who maintained what he owned and wasted nothing, including motion. The papers rested inside his coat, wrapped in oilcloth. He could feel their weight even without touching them. Ink, signatures, dates. Promises made when men still believed paper could outrun consequence. The town went quiet when he entered it. Not all at once. Not dramatic. Just small sounds ending one by one. A hammer stopped mid-swing. A laugh cut short. Someone cleared their throat and did not finish the thought. The rider dismounted in front of the feed store and tied his horse without looking around. He already knew who was watching. A man near the well whispered a name. Not loud enough to carry. Not meant to. The rider heard it anyway. His father's name. It had been 10 years since the old man was put in the ground, but the sound of it still bent rooms and emptied tables. The father had been exacting. He had lent money where banks would not, enforced contracts where courts would not ride, and called it order. Others had called it theft with manners. The son had inherited what remained, a saddle, a rifle, and a ledger thought lost when his father died on a lonely stretch of border road. Shot from his horse. Left where he fell. No witnesses who lived long enough to explain. When the ledger resurfaced, it did not come back clean. Pages missing. Notes added in another hand. Debts sold, resold, and sharpened like tools. The rider stepped into the feed store. The smell of grain and old wood wrapped around him. The proprietor looked up, then looked away again. "I'm looking for a parcel of land," the rider said, voice level, neither threatening nor kind. "Cottonwoods on the east edge. Small ranch." The proprietor swallowed. "Belongs to a widow," he said. The rider nodded once. "That's the one." Outside, the wind moved through town like it was counting doors. The debt had brought him here. But already, something else had begun to walk beside it. The road to the ranch left the town behind without ceremony. One moment there were buildings and fences, the next there was only dust, grass burned pale by the sun, and the low sound of wind moving through things that had learned not to resist it. The rider followed the ledger's description more than the trail itself. Cottonwoods marked the place, just as the paper promised. Green where green had no business being. Their roots drank deep, stubborn, like whoever had chosen to stay. He slowed as he approached. Not from caution, but respect. Places like this earned it. The house was small. No paint left worth naming. Boards replaced one at a time, each from a different year. The roof sagged in the middle but did not leak, which meant someone cared enough to fix it properly, even when there was no one to see. Before he reached the yard, the door opened. The woman stepped out alone. She was younger than he expected, older than she should have been. Her hair was tied back in a way that suggested habit, not vanity. Her hands bore the marks of work that never paused long enough to heal completely. She did not reach for a weapon. She did not ask his business. She waited. "I've come about the land," the rider said. She nodded once, as if she had been expecting him since the day her husband was buried. You'll want to read it to me, she said. They always do. He unfolded the papers carefully, smoothing them against his knee. He read the claim in full. The dates. The amount. The clause written smaller than the rest, meant to be overlooked until it mattered. When he finished, the woman exhaled slowly. My husband paid, she said. Paid the year before he died. I watched him ride into town with the money. I watched him come back lighter. The writer studied her face. Not for truth. For something harder to fake. Behind her, a child shifted inside the doorway. Then another. 2 girls and a boy. None of them spoke. The boy stepped forward until he stood beside his mother. Not in front. Beside. His jaw was set too tight for his age, like he practiced that look when no one was watching. The writer felt something in his chest tighten. Not regret. Recognition. The ledger says otherwise, he said, though the words tasted thin. The ledger lies, the woman replied. No anger. Just certainty. He glanced around the yard. The fence posts were straight, replaced where rot had taken them. The ground was worked carefully, not exhausted. A milk pail sat clean by the steps. Nothing here suggested a family running from its obligations. You've had visitors before, he said. She nodded again. Men who don't explain. Men who don't look at the children. The writer folded the papers and slid them back into his coat. I'll need time, he said. The woman did not thank him. She only met his eyes, searching for the kind of man he was, not the kind he claimed to be. As he turned back toward his horse, the boy spoke for the first time. Are you like the others? The writer paused. No, he said. I'm worse, or better. I haven't decided yet. He mounted and rode away, the cottonwoods whispering behind him. The debt still stood. But now it had faces. The writer returned to town as the light thinned, the sky paling toward evening like a bruise beginning to show. Towns told their truths at that hour, when work was done and caution grew tired. He left his horse at the hitching post and stepped into the saloon without hurry. Inside, the air was stale with smoke and old arguments. A few men sat with their backs to the wall. No one blocked his way. The piano in the corner went silent before the last note finished ringing. He took a seat at the bar. The bartender poured without being asked. Set the glass down with care, as if noise itself might draw something unwanted. You went out there, the bartender said. The writer did not answer. That place, the bartender continued, eyes fixed on the counter. It's been spoken for. By who? The bartender hesitated. Then leaned in just enough. By men who don't collect for themselves. The writer took a single drink. Not for comfort. For time. They ride black, the bartender said. Clean coats. Clean guns. Don't raise their voices. Don't need to. They come with papers that always seem right, even when they ain't. The writer's jaw tightened. The Black Ridge men, someone muttered from a table near the wall. No one contradicted him. They show up after dusk, the bartender went on. Leave deeds tacked to doors like notices of death. Sometimes families are gone before morning. Sometimes they're still there, but the land isn't theirs anymore. Who do they work for? The writer asked. The bartender shook his head. That's the thing. Not a man. Not even a group, not really. It's a system. Debt traded like cattle. Land rolled uphill to people who've never set foot on it. The writer set the glass down untouched now. And my father? The words settled heavy between them. The bartender sighed. He was part of it near the end. Not the worst. But not clean either. Silence followed. The kind that made every man in the room listen, whether he wanted to or not. Outside, hoofbeats passed slow. Deliberate. A man at the far table stood and quietly left through the back door. "They know you're here," the bartender said. The writer rose, adjusted his coat, and turned toward the door. "Then they're behind," he said. As he stepped into the street, the wind carried something new. Not fear. Expectation. The writer did not go back to his room. Instead, he went where old things were kept and rarely questioned. The county office sat behind the church, its doors swollen from years of weather. Inside, ledgers rested in crooked stacks, their spines cracked, their pages soft with age. No clerk challenged him. Either they recognized the name on his face, or they understood when not to ask. He worked by lamplight. Dates repeated themselves in ways they should not have. Debt settled, then resurrected under new ink. Land transferred, then transferred again, always climbing upward, always away from those who worked it. The widow's ranch appeared more than once. Paid in full. Marked closed. Then reopened years later with a different hand, a different amount, and a note written small but sharp. Secured by enforcement. The writer exhaled slowly. His father's handwriting appeared in the margins early on, precise, restrained. Later entries grew messier. Not careless. Pressured. As if someone had been standing too close when they were written. Outside, night settled. Hoofbeats sounded on the road leading out of town. Not many. Not yet. The writer closed the ledger and stepped into the dark. He reached the ranch before dawn, the sky still holding its breath. The cottonwoods rustled as if they knew what was coming. The first rider appeared at the edge of the yard, then another. Black coats. Clean lines. Faces empty of curiosity. They dismounted without speaking. One held the papers. Another rested a hand on his rifle. The widow stepped onto the porch. The children stayed behind her, close enough to touch. "This claim is void," the writer said, stepping forward. He held the ledger open, page marked. Paid. Closed. Reopened by fraud. One of the men smiled. "Barely. That ain't your call." The writer did not raise his voice. "It is now." The guns came up fast. The violence ended faster. Two men lay still in the dust, their black coats already losing their shape. The third mounted hard and rode, spurring his horse until the ground blurred beneath him. The rider stood breathing, steady, deliberate. He looked at the widow. "They'll come again," he said. She nodded. She had known that before he arrived. As the sun crested the horizon, the rider understood the choice he had made. The debt no longer mattered. Only the reckoning did. The man who escaped rode straight through morning. He did not stop at water. Did not slow when the land rose or fell. He knew the cost of delay, and he knew who would pay it if he failed to warn them. By the time he reached Black Ridge, the sun was high and merciless. Black Ridge was less a place than a convergence. A narrow cut in the land where trails crossed, claims were weighed, and decisions were made by men who preferred not to be seen making them. There was no sign, no town center. Just buildings arranged for function, not comfort. When the rider finished speaking, no one interrupted him. At last, a man with silver at his temples closed the ledger in front of him. "So," he said calmly, "the son has decided to correct the father." That night, the Black Ridge men rode. Not in a column. Not with banners or threats. They came in small groups, fanning across the land like something patient and practiced. By dusk, they had surrounded the cottonwoods without announcing themselves. The rider felt them before he saw them. The wind carried their presence. Horses shifting weight. Leather tightening. Metal settling into hands. He sent the widow and children down into the dry wash behind the house before dark. No words wasted. No arguments made. When the first shot came, it was not aimed at him. It shattered a fence post. An offer. The rider stepped into the open. "This ends here," he called. There was no answer. What followed was brief. Purposeful. A series of decisions made cleanly and without heat. The rider moved when he had to, fired when there was no other way, and stopped when stopping was enough. Men fell. Others withdrew. When silence returned, it stayed. The Black Ridge men did not regroup. They did not test the line again. They had learned what systems always learned, eventually. Some ground would not hold them. The rider stood alone among the cottonwoods as night closed in, listening to the land breathe. The reckoning had come. It had taken what it needed. Morning arrived without ceremony. The rider sat on the porch step as the first light touched the cottonwoods, their leaves whispering the same way they always had. The ground bore marks of the night, scuffed earth, a broken rail, darkened patches where men had fallen, but the land was already reclaiming itself. It always did. The widow came out quietly. She did not look past him, and she did not ask what had been done. She understood the shape of consequences well enough. "It's over," the rider said. "For us?" she asked. "For here," he answered. She nodded once, the motion small but final. The children emerged from the wash one by one. The boy met the rider's eyes, searching again for the kind of man he was. This time, the rider held the look. By mid-morning, the rider gathered the papers. Not just the widow's claim, but every deed, note, and addendum tied to Black Ridge that he had taken from the men who rode in the night. He built a small fire at the edge of the yard, fed it carefully, and watched the ink curl and vanish. No speeches. No witnesses beyond the family and the trees. Some debts did not deserve to be passed on. He saddled his horse as the sun climbed. The widow stood with her children behind her. She did not offer thanks. Gratitude would have cheapened what had been done. Instead, she gave him something rarer. Peace. The rider turned toward the open land and rode. Years later, people would speak of a change they could not quite explain. Claims stopped moving the way they used to. Men with black coats chose different roads. Families slept easier on land they had worked all their lives. And somewhere between towns, on roads that did not appear on maps, a rider passed through now and then. Not collecting. Just making sure the land remembered who it belonged to.